Jake Morrison sat in the cold metal chair and stared across the massive crystal table at the alien faces that had become too familiar over the past 3 years. The Galactic Council chamber floated in the dark space between stars like a giant glass bubble filled with creatures that thought they owned the universe. 12 different species sat around the curved table, and each one looked at the humans like they were children who needed to be taught lessons. The Zalathi representative Vextar moved his purple tentacles in slow patterns as he spoke through the translation device that made his thoughts into words all species could understand. His voice came out flat and emotionless, even though Jake knew the alien was angry. The Zalathi always got angry when humans asked questions or suggested different ideas. Earth must accept the new mining restrictions, Vextar said for the 100th time that day. Your species takes too many resources from your system, and this affects galactic trade balance. You will limit your asteroid mining to 20% of current levels and submit all new colonies for council approval before any construction begins. Jake looked down at the datapad in front of him that showed the same demands the council had been making for months. Restrict human expansion. Limit human technology development. Put human military under council oversight. Give up human independence piece by piece until Earth became just another client world that followed orders from alien masters who had never set foot on human soil. Captain Lisa Barnes sat 3 seats away from Jake at the human delegation table. She wore her military uniform with pride, even though the council members always frowned when they saw it. The aliens did not like that humans had their own army and navy. They wanted all military forces to be under council control so no single species could challenge their authority. Lisa caught Jake's eye and gave him a small nod. She was ready for whatever came next. Behind them in the observation area sat Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had spent 2 years trying to explain human science to aliens who thought they already knew everything. The council scientists always dismissed human research as primitive or dangerous. They said humans moved too fast and took too many risks. They wanted humanity to use only approved technology and follow approved research methods that would keep human development slow and controlled. Jake had listened to 3 years of lectures about how young species needed guidance from older civilizations. He had nodded politely while aliens explained why humans could not be trusted with advanced weapons or faster ships or independent colonies. He had signed papers and made agreements and compromised on every point the council demanded. But today was different. Today, Jake was tired of pretending that any of this was fair or reasonable. The Mindari representative spoke next without moving his mouth, because his species communicated through direct thought transfer. The translation device made his mental words sound like whispers. Humans show concerning aggressive tendencies in their expansion patterns. Military buildup in outer sol systems suggests preparation for hostile activities. Council requires immediate inspection of all human military facilities. Jake almost laughed out loud. The council wanted to inspect human military bases while they kept their own weapons and fleets secret. They wanted humans to be transparent while alien governments hid behind layers of classification and diplomatic immunity. The hypocrisy was so obvious that Jake wondered how the aliens could say these things with straight faces. The Corvex delegate made clicking sounds with his crystalline body that the translator turned into words about trade violations and unauthorized technology development. The Threx Collective spoke as one voice about species harmony and acceptable behavior standards. Every alien had the same message delivered in different words. Submit, obey, accept your place as the newest and least important member of our galactic order. Jake stood up slowly and felt every alien eye in the chamber focus on him. The crystal dome suddenly felt smaller, and the recycled air tasted stale in his mouth. He looked around the table at creatures who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, and thought they would rule it for thousands more. Species who had forgotten what it meant to fight for freedom or stand up against injustice. Earth withdraws from these proceedings, Jake said in a clear voice that carried across the silent chamber. We are done with this circus. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Tentacles waved frantically. Crystal bodies chimed with alarm. Mental voices shouted in confusion. The Threx Collective buzzed like an angry beehive. but Jake just stood there calmly while chaos erupted around him. Vextar's tentacles turned dark purple with rage. Humans cannot simply leave these negotiations. You are bound by Galactic Treaty 447C, which your species signed 3 years ago. You have legal obligations to this council. Jake smiled for the first time in months. Treaty 447C was signed under duress when Earth had no choice but to accept council terms or face economic sanctions and military pressure. We consider that treaty void due to coercion. The human delegation gathered their materials and walked toward the chamber exit while aliens shouted protests and demands. No species had ever walked away from the Galactic Council before. It was unprecedented. It was unthinkable. It was very human. 3 months passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Council chamber, and the silence from Earth grew louder each day. Every attempt to contact the Sol system met the same response, which was no response at all. Communication satellites that had carried diplomatic messages for years suddenly went dark. Trade frequencies that once buzzed with human voices now carried only empty static. Council Security Chief Nexvol paced back and forth in his command center on the Council military station. His Krugan warrior instincts told him something dangerous was happening, but he could not see the threat clearly. The humans had simply vanished from galactic communication networks like they had never existed at all. Ships that tried to approach, the Sol system found themselves met by human patrol vessels that politely but firmly escorted them away from the outer planets. They are building something. Nexvol reported to the emergency council session that had been meeting every day since the human walkout. Our long-range sensors detect massive construction projects throughout their system. New shipyards around Jupiter, orbital platforms near Saturn. Energy signatures we have never seen before, coming from the asteroid belt. The council chamber felt different without human representatives sitting at the table. Empty chairs reminded everyone that something unprecedented had happened. No species in galactic history had ever simply left the council. Client worlds sometimes rebelled, but they always came back eventually when economic pressure became too strong. Independent worlds sometimes refused to join, but they never left once they were members. Vextar's tentacles moved in agitated patterns as he studied intelligence reports from Zalathi spy networks. Human commercial ships have stopped visiting our trade stations. Their merchant vessels no longer dock at council ports. Economic analysts estimate a 15% drop in luxury goods availability across council space due to loss of human exports. The Mindari representative projected thoughts of concern and confusion. His species prided themselves on being able to read the intentions of other races through careful observation of behavior patterns. But humans had always been difficult for telepaths to understand, and now they were impossible to reach at all. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had become the most wanted person in council space, but not by human authorities. The council desperately needed to understand what Earth was planning, and Rodriguez had been their primary source of information about human scientific capabilities. Her research files had vanished along with her, and no one knew if she had fled to Earth or simply gone into hiding somewhere in council territory. On Luna Base, Admiral Ben Carter watched construction crews work around the clock on projects that would have been impossible just months earlier. The human industrial complex had shifted into a mode of production that surprised even Carter, who had spent his career in military logistics. Factories that once made civilian goods now produced components for weapon systems. Mining operations that had focused on commercial metals now extracted rare elements needed for advanced propulsion systems. The ships taking shape in the orbital yards looked nothing like traditional human vessels. Gone were the bulky cargo haulers and simple patrol boats that had carried human flags for decades. The new designs were sleek and angular with hull materials that seemed to bend light around them. Energy readings from their power cores suggested technology far beyond anything humans had demonstrated before. Carter received daily briefings from construction supervisors who reported progress that seemed impossible even with unlimited resources and workforce. The new drive systems are testing at efficiency levels we only theorized about last year, Chief Engineer Rachel Moore told him during their morning meeting. Power output is 3 times higher than our best previous designs, and fuel consumption is actually lower, President Amy Foster addressed the United Earth Assembly from the rebuilt conference room in Geneva. The hall was packed with representatives from every nation and colony who had put aside old disagreements to focus on the greatest challenge humanity had ever faced. The decision to leave the council had been unanimous, but the consequences were still unknown. "We tried to work within their system," Foster said to the assembled delegates and the billions watching on broadcast networks. "We followed their rules and accepted their limitations and compromised our principles to maintain peace. But peace without freedom is just another form of slavery." The reaction from Earth's population had surprised many political observers. Instead of panic or fear about isolation from galactic civilization, humans seemed energized by the prospect of independence. Public opinion polls showed overwhelming support for the withdrawal from council authority. Citizens volunteered for expanded military service and increased work shifts to support the massive construction projects. Meanwhile, on the edge of the Sol system, patrol ships maintained constant watch for council vessels that might try to enter human space without permission. Captain Kevin Brooks commanded the defense perimeter from his base on Pluto, where new sensor arrays tracked every object larger than a shuttle within 50 light-years of Earth. The technology involved in these sensors had been classified above his clearance level, but Brooks understood they represented a major advancement in detection capability. The first test came when a Zalathi diplomatic courier tried to approach Mars with what they claimed was an urgent message for human leadership. Brooks's patrol intercepted the alien vessel and delivered the standard response. "Sol system is closed to non-human traffic by order of Earth government. Please depart immediately, or you will be escorted to the system boundary," the Zalathi captain protested that diplomatic immunity protected courier vessels under galactic law, but Brooks had his orders. 2 human escorts flanked the alien ship and guided it back beyond the heliopause, where it was released with a recorded message for council leadership. The message was simple and direct. Earth will communicate when and if we choose to communicate. Until then, respect our sovereignty. Council analysts studied every piece of information they could gather about human activities, but the picture remained frustratingly incomplete. Humans had always been secretive about their most advanced research, but now they had disappeared entirely behind a wall of silence that no intelligence network could penetrate. The Council's spy probe drifted through the outer reaches of the Sol system like a grain of sand in an ocean of space. Built by the best Mindari engineers and equipped with Korvek's stealth technology, the tiny device had taken 6 weeks to reach its target without being detected by human sensors. What it discovered in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter sent shockwaves through every Council intelligence agency in the galaxy. Nexval stared at the probe data streaming across multiple screens in his command center. Each image was more impossible than the last. Massive construction platforms floated among the asteroids like artificial moons. Ships unlike anything in Council databases moved between the platforms in precise formations. Energy readings suggested power sources that should not exist according to current galactic science. Run the analysis again. Nexval ordered his technical staff, even though he knew the results would not change. These readings cannot be accurate. But the data was accurate, and it painted a picture that terrified Council leadership. Humans had not just been building ships during their months of silence. They had been creating an entirely new class of vessel that defied every assumption about human technological capabilities. The largest structures detected by the probe were the size of small planets with energy signatures that registered off. The scale of Council measurement systems. Commander Chris Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched stars wheel past the forward windows in patterns that should have been impossible. The ship was traveling faster than light, but not through hyperspace like Council vessels. Instead, the Defiance was punching holes through space-time itself and stepping from one point to another without crossing the distance in between. Jump. Complete reported. Navigation Officer Danny Price from his station. We have traveled 800 light-years in 14 minutes. All systems operating within normal parameters. Sullivan nodded, but kept his expression neutral, even though excitement burned in his chest. The test flight was exceeding all expectations. Journey times that would take Council ships months to complete were now measured in hours. The technology that made this possible had been hidden in classified research facilities for years, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Dr. Maria Santos worked in Laboratory 7 deep beneath the Colorado mountains, where the most secret human research took place. Her team had been studying artifacts recovered from the ocean trenches of Earth for over a decade. The objects were clearly artificial, but made from materials and using techniques that predated any known civilization. Now those artifacts were finally yielding their secrets. The power core design is based on principles we are only beginning to understand, Santos explained to the reviewing committee of scientists and military officers, but our prototypes are producing energy outputs that exceed our wildest projections. We are talking about power generation capabilities that could supply entire planets. The artifacts had been discovered by deep-sea mining operations that found them buried in sediment layers millions of years old. At first, scientists assumed they were natural formations with unusual properties. But detailed analysis revealed complex internal structures and energy patterns that could only be artificial. Someone or something had built these devices long before humans developed spaceflight. Admiral Ben Carter received the latest intelligence reports from his office on Luna Base, where he coordinated human military expansion. The probe data from Council sources confirmed what human leadership had suspected for months. The aliens were panicking. Their entire understanding of galactic power balance was crumbling as they realized humans possessed capabilities they had never imagined. Economic projections show widespread market instability across Council space, reported intelligence analyst Karen Walsh. Currency values are fluctuating wildly as investors lose confidence in Council military superiority. Some species are already reaching out through back channels asking about potential trade agreements with Earth. The change in alien behavior was dramatic and telling. Species that had treated humans like inferior clients just months ago were now desperate for information about human capabilities and intentions. Council military forces were being repositioned to strengthen defenses around core worlds. Emergency funding was being allocated for weapons research projects that had been considered unnecessary for decades. Captain Ryan Phillips commanded the first human vessel to leave the Sol system since the Council withdrawal. The UES Vengeance was not an exploration ship or a diplomatic courier. It was a warship designed to demonstrate human capabilities to anyone who might doubt them. Phillips had specific orders about where to go and what to do when he arrived. The Vengeance emerged from its space-time jump directly above the Zalathi homeworld without any warning or detection by planetary defense systems. The ship appeared in the upper atmosphere like a ghost materializing from thin air. Panic spread through Zalathi command centers as their most advanced sensors failed to track how the human vessel had arrived. Phillips opened a communication channel to the planetary government while his ship hovered motionless above their capital city. "This is Captain Phillips of the Terran vessel Vengeance. We are here to deliver a message." The Zalathi defense fleet scrambled to respond, but their ships moved like insects compared to the human vessel that could appear and disappear at will. Phillips waited exactly 60 seconds to ensure his demonstration had maximum impact. Then the Vengeance vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind only a communication buoy that began broadcasting on all frequencies. The buoy contained detailed scans of every Zalathi military installation, every secret research facility, every hidden weapons cache on the planet and in orbit around it. The message was clear without being spoken directly. If humans wanted to destroy the Zalathi homeworld, they could do so easily and without warning. The presence of the Vengeance had been a demonstration of capability rather than a threat of immediate action. News of the human demonstration spread through Council space faster than official communications could carry it. The impossible had happened. A single human ship had penetrated the defenses of one of the most powerful Council species and proven that no alien world was safe from human reach. The implications were staggering and terrifying for civilizations that had considered themselves secure behind layers of military protection and defensive technology. Dr. Patricia Woods led the archaeological team studying the underwater ruins off the coast of Japan, where the most significant artifact discoveries had been made. Her findings suggested a truth that would change everything humans thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. The UES Vengeance materialized above the Zalathi homeworld for the second time in a week, but this visit was different. Captain Ryan Phillips had not come to demonstrate human capabilities or deliver warnings. He had come to change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The communication buoy his ship had left behind during the first visit had been broadcasting continuously for 7 days, and every government in Council space had received the message. Phillips stood on his bridge and looked down at the blue-green world that housed 3 billion Zalathi civilians who had no idea their leaders had brought them to the edge of a war they could not win. The planet's defense fleet surrounded his ship in a desperate attempt to show strength, but Phillips knew their weapons could not penetrate his shields, and their ships could not match his speed. "Open a channel to Planetary Command," Phillips ordered. His communications officer full-spectrum broadcast so everyone can hear what we have to say. The message that went out from the Vengeance was not a threat or an ultimatum. It was a simple statement of fact, delivered in calm, professional tones that made it even more terrifying. "You wanted to control us. Now see what we have become." Admiral Nancy Taylor commanded the human Exodus fleet from her flagship UES Horizon as it approached the star system that would become humanity's first colony outside Sol. The fleet consisted of 47 vessels carrying everything needed to establish a complete civilization on a world the Council had declared uninhabitable due to its unstable climate and toxic atmosphere. Taylor watched through her bridge windows as terraforming ships moved ahead of the main fleet to begin, transforming the hostile planet into something humans could call home. The process that should have taken decades was being completed in a matter of weeks using technology that made Council environmental engineering look primitive and slow. "Atmospheric processors are operating at maximum efficiency," reported Chief Science Officer Linda Hayes from her station. "We should have breathable air and stable weather patterns within 30 days. Preliminary soil treatment is showing excellent results." The planet had been surveyed by Council explorers decades earlier and dismissed as worthless due to the extreme temperatures and poisonous gases that made up its atmosphere. But human scientists had looked at the same data and seen opportunity where aliens saw only obstacles. The world had abundant mineral resources and plenty of water locked in polar ice caps that could be melted and purified. Meanwhile, in Council space, panic was spreading, faster than any military response could contain it. Reports came in daily of human ships appearing in systems that should have been unreachable. Human technology was being demonstrated in ways that made it clear the balance of power had shifted permanently. The species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were discovering they were no longer the strongest force in their own territory. The Krugan military decided to test human capabilities directly rather than rely on second-hand reports and intelligence estimates. War Chief Grakthor assembled a task force of the Krugan's most advanced warships and set course for the coordinates where human explorers had been detected. The Krugan had never lost a direct military confrontation, and they did not believe any species could match their combat effectiveness. The encounter lasted 37 seconds. The human exploration vessel UES Pioneer detected the approaching Krugan fleet while it was still light hours away and responded by simply waiting for them to arrive. When the alien warships emerged from hyperspace ready for battle, they found the single human ship floating calmly in space with no apparent weapons powered and no defensive systems active. Captain Kevin Brooks commanded the Pioneer, and he had specific instructions about how to handle aggressive contact with Council forces. The standing orders were clear. Demonstrate superiority without causing casualties. Show strength without starting a war. make the point that humans could defend themselves without proving they were a threat to peaceful neighbors. The Krugen opened fire with everything they had: plasma cannons and missile batteries and energy weapons that could crack asteroids, all focused on the lone human vessel. But the attacks simply passed through empty space where the Pioneer had been a moment before. The human ship had not moved in any conventional sense. It had simply stopped being in one place and started being in another. Brooks reappeared behind the Krugen formation and used precise energy bursts to disable their weapon systems without damaging the ships themselves. Krugen warriors found their mighty warships drifting helpless in space, with life support intact, but everything else shut down. The crews were unconscious, but unharmed when human rescue teams arrived to check on their condition. The message was delivered without words. Human technology was so advanced that the galaxy's fiercest warriors were like children playing with toys. The demonstration was recorded and transmitted to every government in council space, along with a simple statement: "Humans do not seek conflict, but we will not be threatened or attacked." Dr. Elena Rodriguez had spent months in hiding after disappearing from council space during the human withdrawal. Now she emerged from her secret laboratory on a hidden asteroid to reveal research that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Her findings about human technological adaptation were only the beginning of discoveries that went much deeper than anyone had imagined. "The artifacts we found on Earth are not random objects left by an unknown species," Rodriguez announced during her first public broadcast since vanishing. "They are components of a vast technological network that spans the entire galaxy, a network built by our ancestors." The revelation sent shockwaves through both human and alien populations. Archaeological evidence suggested that humans were not newcomers to the galactic stage, but rather the returning descendants of the race that had originally populated and ruled the galaxy millions of years ago. The technology humans were now demonstrating was not newly developed, but rather remembered and reconstructed from genetic memory and recovered artifacts. Council scientists tried to dismiss Rodriguez's claims as impossible speculation, but the evidence was overwhelming. Human DNA contained genetic markers that matched biological traces found at archaeological sites across the galaxy. The ancient ruins that dotted dozens of worlds all showed the same architectural patterns and technological signatures that appeared in human artifacts found on Earth. President Amy Foster prepared to address not just humanity, but the entire galaxy for the first time since the Council withdrawal. Her message would be broadcast on every communication frequency and translated into every known language. The time for secrets and gradual revelation had ended. Dr. Patricia Wood stood before the assembled leaders of Earth in the deepest chamber of the underwater research facility, where the most important discovery in human history had been made. Behind her, on massive display screens, were images that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about the past and the future. The artifacts recovered from Earth's ocean trenches were not mysterious objects left by unknown aliens. They were the technological inheritance of humanity's true ancestors. "The genetic analysis is conclusive," Woods announced to the packed auditorium. "Human DNA contains markers that match biological samples recovered from archaeological sites on 47 different worlds across the galaxy. We are not a young species that stumbled onto the galactic stage. We are the descendants of the forerunners who originally seeded this galaxy with intelligent life." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Military leaders who had spent their careers preparing for alien threats suddenly realized they were not defending humanity against foreign invaders, but reclaiming territory that had always belonged to them. Scientists who had struggled to understand impossible technologies finally had the context that made everything clear. Politicians who had negotiated from positions of assumed weakness discovered they had been bargaining with their own former subjects. Admiral Ben Carter received the classified briefing about the Forerunner discoveries in his secure office on Luna Base, where he coordinated human military expansion. The implications were staggering beyond anything he had imagined. Every piece of technology the Council possessed was built on foundations laid by human ancestors. Every advancement alien civilizations had made was based on reverse engineering. Forerunner artifacts found on their homeworlds. The star charts are the most significant find, reported Chief Archaeologist Danny Miller, who had been studying the recovered data cores. They show hyperspace routes that predate current galactic civilization by millions of years. Hidden pathways that connect every inhabited system through a network the current species never discovered. The star charts revealed the true scope of Forerunner civilization. What Council species thought of as separate regions of space were actually connected by ancient transportation networks that could move ships across the galaxy in hours rather than months. The technology had been lost when the Forerunners vanished, but the infrastructure remained waiting for someone who knew how to activate it. Captain Kevin Brooks commanded the UES Awakening on its historic journey to the galactic core, where no Council ship had ever traveled and returned. The region was considered impossibly dangerous due to gravitational anomalies and energy storms that destroyed conventional vessels. But human ships equipped with Forerunner technology moved through the hazards like they were navigating calm space. The galactic core held secrets that explained why the Council had never been able to explore it successfully. Ancient Forerunner. Installations still operated there after millions of years maintaining systems that regulated galactic stability. The energy storms that destroyed alien ships were actually defensive measures designed to protect the core facilities from unauthorized access. "We have established contact with the Central Processing Network," Brooks reported during his first transmission from the galactic core. "The system recognizes human genetic markers and has granted us full access to Forerunner databases. We are downloading star charts, navigation protocols, and facility locations for the entire galaxy." The download included coordinates for sleeper facilities hidden throughout known space, installations that had been disguised as natural formations or archaeological ruins, but were actually dormant technology centers waiting for their creators to return. Each facility contained everything needed to restart Forerunner civilization, including manufacturing systems, defensive networks, and population support infrastructure. President Amy Foster prepared for the most important speech in human history, as she stood before cameras that would broadcast her words to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The council chamber that had once dismissed human concerns now trembled at the thought of what she might say. Alien governments that had treated Earth as a subordinate client state suddenly realized they had been ruling over the rightful heirs to galactic civilization. "Citizens of the galaxy." Foster began speaking in a calm voice that carried absolute authority. "For too long you have lived under the assumption that the current order represents the natural way of things. You have been taught that the council species are the mature civilizations, while humans are newcomers who need guidance and control. Today, you learn the truth." The broadcast reached every world simultaneously through communication networks that humans now controlled using Forerunner technology. No government could block or filter the message as it appeared on every screen and speaker across known space. The words that followed would reshape galactic politics forever. "We did not abandon the council talks. We graduated from them. The species you call human are the direct descendants of the Forerunners who built this galactic civilization millions of years ago. Every piece of technology you use, every scientific principle you follow, every social structure you maintain is based on foundations we laid before your species developed spaceflight." The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Archaeological data, genetic analysis, technological comparisons, and historical records all supported the same conclusion. Humanity was not a young race struggling to find its place among established civilizations. They were the returning founders of galactic society, coming home after a long exile to reclaim their inheritance. The reaction across council space was immediate and chaotic. Stock markets crashed as investors realized the entire galactic economy was built on technology belonging to humans. Military leaders discovered their most advanced weapons were primitive copies of Forerunner designs. Political structures that had maintained stability for thousands of years suddenly seemed temporary and illegitimate. The Corvex were the first, major council species to formally request entry into what humans now called the Terran Alliance. Their crystal-based civilization had always been the most scientifically advanced among council races, but even they had to admit human technology was centuries ahead of anything they possessed. Rather than resist the inevitable, they chose to ally themselves with the returning masters of the galaxy. Dr. Elena Rodriguez emerged from her secret research facility to address the scientific community about discoveries that would revolutionize every field of study. The Forerunner databases contained knowledge accumulated over millions of years of galactic exploration and experimentation, technologies that could solve energy crises, terraform dead worlds, cure diseases, and extend lifespans beyond anything currently imaginable. This is not about human superiority over other species, Rodriguez explained during her first public appearance since the withdrawal. It is about returning to the original purpose of galactic civilization, which was cooperation and growth rather than competition and control. The Forerunners did not rule through force, but through wisdom and shared prosperity. 1 year after humanity walked out of the Galactic Council chamber, the galaxy looked completely different. The Council still existed, but it was a shadow of its former authority, with member species leaving daily to join the Terran Alliance. What had once been the supreme governing body of galactic civilization now controlled less than 30% of inhabited space, and that percentage dropped every week as more worlds recognized the new reality. Ambassador Jake Morrison returned to the Crystal Dome chamber where he had been dismissed and threatened just 12 months earlier. But this time he came not as a supplicant seeking approval from alien masters, but as the representative of the galaxy's rightful rulers. The same aliens who had lectured him about young species needing guidance now sat nervously in their chairs, wondering if they would be allowed to keep their positions in the new order. The chamber itself had been modified to accommodate the changed circumstances. Human technology now provided the life support and communication systems that kept the floating station operational. Council species had discovered their own equipment was primitive compared to Forerunner designs, and they had been forced to accept human assistance to maintain basic functions. We offer partnership, not domination, Morrison announced to the assembled representatives. But partnership means equality. No more ultimatums demanding that humans limit their expansion or submit to alien oversight. No more threats about what will happen if we refuse to follow council directives. No more treating us like children who need lessons about the galaxy we built. The response was very different from his last appearance in the chamber, where once alien delegates had dismissed human concerns with arrogant lectures about galactic law and proper procedures. Now they listened carefully to every word Morrison spoke. The power balance had not just shifted, it had been completely inverted. General Lisa Barnes commanded the Terran Alliance Defense Force from her headquarters on New Geneva, where humanity had established its first extrasolar capital. Her responsibilities now included protecting former Council worlds from threats their own militaries could not handle. Pirates who had operated freely in the outer systems for decades found themselves facing human patrol ships that could appear anywhere without warning. The change in galactic security was dramatic and immediate. Problems that had plagued Council space for centuries were resolved by human forces in a matter of weeks. Rogue artificial intelligence networks that had terrorized entire star systems were shut down by human cyber warfare specialists who understood the underlying code better than its creators. Interdimensional predators that had been considered unstoppable forces of nature were repelled by human ships equipped with Forerunner defensive technologies. Threat response time has improved by 97% since the Alliance took over security operations, Barnes reported during her monthly briefing to Terran leadership. Council military forces required an average of 43 days to respond to emergency calls in remote systems. Our response time is now measured in hours. The economic transformation was equally dramatic. Trade routes that had taken months to traverse using Council hyperspace technology were now completed in days through the Forerunner transport network that humans had reactivated. Goods and resources flowed freely between worlds that had been isolated by distance and poor transportation infrastructure. Captain Kevin Brooks oversaw the establishment of humanity's first deep space exploration program since the revelation of their Forerunner heritage. Ships equipped with ancient star charts were discovering worlds and civilizations that had been completely unknown to Council surveys. The galaxy was much larger and more diverse than anyone had realized because previous exploration had been limited by inferior technology and incomplete navigation data. We have made contact with 17 previously unknown species in the past 6 months, Brooks reported from his flagship during the latest exploration mission. Most are pre-space flight, civilizations that show clear signs of Forerunner influence in their development. Archaeological evidence suggests our ancestors visited these worlds and left technological gifts that guided their evolution. The discovery of primitive species that carried Forerunner genetic markers supported the theory that humanity's ancestors had been gardeners of galactic civilization rather than conquerors. They had planted seeds of intelligence and creativity throughout the galaxy and then withdrawn to let other species develop according to their own natures. The current human population represented the return of the gardeners to check on their work. President Amy Foster stood in the observation deck of New Geneva Station and looked out at a view that would have been impossible just months earlier. Ships from dozens of different species docked at human facilities while their crews learned new technologies and participated in expanded trade networks. The diversity was remarkable, but it was organized diversity guided by wisdom rather than chaos driven by competition. They thought they were the adults in the room, Foster said to Admiral Carter, who had joined her for the daily security briefing. They forgot that sometimes the children grow up and realize their parents were not as wise as they claimed to be. The transformation of galactic society was not without its challenges. Some Council species refused to accept the new reality and continued to operate independent governments in increasingly isolated regions of space. The Zalathi had retreated to their core worlds and maintained a hostile stance toward human expansion. A few other species had formed a rump council that claimed to represent the legitimate government of galactic civilization. But these holdouts were becoming increasingly irrelevant as more worlds joined the alliance and embraced the prosperity that came with access to Forerunner technology. Quality of life improvements were immediate and obvious. Medical advances that had been theoretical dreams became practical realities. Energy problems that had limited development for centuries were solved with power generation systems that produced more than entire star systems could consume. Dr. Patricia Woods continued her archaeological research, but now she had access to Forerunner databases that provided context for every discovery. The ancient ruins scattered across the galaxy were not mysterious monuments to a lost civilization, but rather components of a vast network designed to guide the development of intelligent species. Each site contained lessons and tools appropriate for the evolutionary stage of its local population. The Forerunners were not gods or supreme beings, Woods explained during her latest research presentation. They were gardeners who understood that true civilization requires diversity and freedom, rather than uniformity and control. They planted seeds and then stepped back to let other species grow according to their own natures. The final transformation came when the Galactic Council's emergency beacon fell silent for the first time in 10,000 years. The device had been used to summon the galaxy's greatest powers whenever existential threats emerged, but it was no longer needed. Humanity had returned home and the galaxy was finally safe under the protection of its original guardians. The age of Council dominance was over, and the age of renewed Forerunner civilization had begun.